Good morning. Carrying on our devotions this week. And what we saw yesterday was the Israelites just erupt into song after God delivered them from the Egyptians once and for all. And now, starting today, the journey kind of really truly begins. And as I was thinking about this, it's kind of like that kid going off to college. You know what I mean? We had the promise to Abraham, but he was just one man. But this promise of a great nation, and even specific down to they would be sojourners in a foreign land, and they'd come out as a nation and with great possessions. And so God has fulfilled all that. So now we have this nation, and basically to fulfill the rest of His promise, they simply have to get to the promised land. And they're starting out on that journey. And so, chapter 15, starting at verse 22, this new nation, off they go. And 3 days in, so it says, verse 22, chapter 15 of Exodus, Then Moses made Israel set out from the Red Sea, and they went to the wilderness of Shur. They went 3 days into the wilderness and found no water. Uh-oh, what are they going to do? When they came to Marah, they could not drink the water because it was bitter. That's why it was called Marah. And the people grumbled against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? And so he cried to the Lord, and the Lord showed him a log or a tree that he put in the water in it, and it made it drinkable. And so right away, we're only 3 days past God doing these incredible miracles. Again, His presence visible right there with them, with the pillar of cloud and pillar of fire. And yet, they lacked trust. They wouldn't believe that God would provide for them, and so they grumble. And God graciously, despite the grumbling and the mistrust and not having faith, He provides for them. And it's easy to kind of look at the Israelites and criticize them, but don't we do this, folks? Don't we do this? How easy is it that we forget how God has provided in the past, and we get into the next situation, we worry and we grumble. And this is a great reminder, not only for the original readers of this as they look back on how God provided, but for us as well. And so they go from the water, and then they set out from there, and they keep traveling, and they get to a place called Elim. It sounds like a pretty cool place, these 7 springs and palm trees, and they camp there. It's about 2.5 months after they've left Egypt. But then chapter 16, verse 2 says, And the whole congregation of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the people said, Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by meat pots and ate bread to the full? For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill us with hunger. And so I guess the food that they had brought out of Egypt, they've run out of that food. And so now they're once again grumbling against the Lord and saying, we wish we'd been back in Egypt, which, that isn't that, how would that hurt the heart of God? This incredible deliverance, all these things He's put in place to remind the people of how He's delivered them, and yet they keep going back to where they were enslaved. And again, for us, if we would stop and think about our own lives, how often do we go back and try the things the world offers? You know, God has saved us from that dead life, and delivered us from that, and yet how often do we go back and get sucked back in and think, and try the world's ways again, for joy, for satisfaction, for even trying to earn our salvation again, all those things that Jesus paid for in full already. And so again, another reminder for us, we're humans just like the Israelites were, and we have these tendencies, and we need to trust Him and not look to go back to the ways of the world. And so the Lord says to Moses, I'm going to provide. I will rain down bread from heaven for you, and the people will go and gather a day's portion each day. And then He says, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. So part of this So God's prepared them. They get to this situation. How are they going to respond? Poorly. They insult him, saying they wish they'd have stayed in Egypt. They don't trust again, despite all that he's done. But God's teaching them something. He's growing them, just like he does us. Thank God for his forgiveness and that he grows us. So he tests them. Are they going to obey? I'm going to give them very specific instructions, very simple instructions to follow, and test them, see if they can follow my law. So he says, there's going to be bread on the ground. You go out, you take only enough for that day, because you have to trust, have faith that I will provide for tomorrow. And so the Israelites go out, and then he says also, and only take enough for just your family. Based on how much, gave a measurement, based on the number of people in your family, this is how much you take. So what happens? Well, they go out, and do you think they gathered only what they needed? No, they gathered way more. But God did a miracle, kind of like Jesus and the loaves of fish when he fed the multitude. Those who gathered just spent all day working all morning, gathering tons of manna. They get there and they measure it, they weigh it out, and it was the exact right amount for their family. And there was other people who go and didn't gather enough for their family, and they got back and it had multiplied, and there was enough for their family, exactly what they needed. Well, then God also said, don't keep it for tomorrow. So even though they had the exact right amount for the day, some of them still didn't believe God after that miracle, and they tried to keep some for the next day. And the next day they opened up and it was full of maggots. Ugh. But when it came to the sixth day, God made a special rule. He said, on the sixth day, before the Sabbath, there won't be any manna on the Sabbath day, on the Saturday morning for them. So I want you to gather double on the day before the Sabbath, and this time it's going to keep. There won't be maggots tomorrow. And so he gives that instruction. And do the people believe that? No. So they go out, and a bunch of them go out on the Sabbath morning to gather more manna, which of course there isn't any. God also sent quail, by the way, for meat. That's just a picture of they didn't have to have it. That was an overabundance. That was God being so gracious, just like he is to us. And so God, verse 28, after all these tests and unfortunately them failing pretty much every one, the Lord said to Moses, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? See, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, on the sixth day, he gives you bread for 2 days. Remain in your place on the Sabbath. Don't go out on the seventh day. And so the people rested on the seventh day. And then the chapter ends with God saying, I want you to take another symbol, take some of the manna, put it in a pot, and keep it. It would end up in the Ark of the Covenant, actually. Later on, we'll see that. As again, one more reminder of God's provision. And so for us, what do you need to trust God with? Where do we need to just trust him with what we have going on in our life today? Or what about your worry? Are you worrying about tomorrow? Jesus said not to worry about tomorrow. Today has enough worries on its own. Don't worry about tomorrow. It's from Matthew 6. And so what do you need to trust God with today? And if you're worrying, how can you give that to God and have faith that he will take care of it and be with you no matter what you're going through, provide as he does. So with that, may the Lord bless you and keep you and make his face to shine upon you. And today would you know his peace.